Welcome to Midnight Murmurs, where we explore the depths of horror and suspense. Have you ever been stranded in a remote, run-down resort with strange noises at night and a figure lurking in the shadows? The survivors of the last resort have. Join us as we delve into their spine-chilling tale of survival and the dark forces that threaten to consume them all. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more Midnight Murmurs. The Last Resort. Chapter 1: Arrival. The guests arrived at the resort one by one, each of them with their own reasons for coming. They were greeted by a dusty lobby with an old wooden desk where an empty guest book lay open. A small bell on the counter rang as they signed their names, but no one came to greet them. The guests shrugged it off, assuming the staff was busy elsewhere. As they made their way to their rooms, they couldn't help but notice the state of the place. The wallpaper was peeling, and the carpets were frayed and stained. The musty smell was overpowering, and they could hear the creaky floorboards as they walked. Each room had a small bed, a nightstand, and a rickety chair. They quickly realized that this was not the luxury vacation they had hoped for. Despite the resort's shortcomings, the guests tried to make the best of their situation. Some explored the surrounding forest, while others lounged in the common room, sipping on lukewarm coffee. As the sun began to set, they gathered for dinner in the dining room, where they shared stories and tried to get to know each other. But the unease was palpable, and they all sensed that something was off about the place. As the night fell, they retired to their rooms, hoping to get some sleep. But the strange noises outside their doors kept them up, and some even reported seeing shadows moving in the hallways. It was clear that this was not going to be a peaceful vacation. Chapter 2: The Disappearances begin. The first disappearance was sudden and inexplicable. One moment, the guest was there, and the next, they were gone. The others searched frantically for any sign of what had happened, but found nothing. As the days went on, more guests began to vanish, one by one. Some left behind clues, while others simply vanished without a trace. The tension in the group grew, and paranoia set in. Who would be next? As they searched for answers, they uncovered the dark history of the resort. It had once been a thriving getaway for the wealthy, but had fallen into disrepair after a tragic incident years before. The staff had disappeared, and the resort had been abandoned ever since. Rumors began to circulate among the guests about the sinister forces that lurked within the resort's walls. Some spoke of ghosts and hauntings, while others believed that the staff had returned to seek revenge. As the disappearances continued, the group grew more desperate. They searched every inch of the resort, but found nothing. The only thing they were sure of was that they were not alone. The once tranquil atmosphere of the resort had been replaced by an eerie, unsettling feeling. The guests were constantly on edge, listening for any sound that might signal the next disappearance. Despite their fear, they knew they had to find a way out before it was too late. But as they searched for an escape, they discovered that the resort was not going to let them go without a fight. In the end, the group banded together to face the evil that threatened to consume them all. They knew that their only chance of survival was to confront the dark forces that lurked within the resort's walls. Whether they would emerge from the encounter unscathed was another matter entirely. Chapter 3: The Mysterious Figure. The guests huddled together in the dimly lit lobby of the resort, their eyes darting nervously towards the windows as the night drew in around them. The strange noises they had heard the previous night echoed in their minds, and they all knew that something was not right about this place. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, causing the guests to jump in fright. It was a tall, lean man with a gaunt face and piercing eyes. His hair was wild and unkempt, and he was dressed in ragged, filthy clothing. He approached them slowly, his eyes fixed on each of them in turn. They could feel his gaze piercing through their souls, and a cold shiver ran down their spines. The man spoke in a low, rasping voice, and his words were filled with menace. "I have been waiting for you," he said, his eyes glittering in the dim light. "You cannot leave this place. You belong to me now." The guests recoiled in horror, their hearts pounding in their chests. They knew that they were trapped in this remote resort with a figure that was both mysterious and malevolent. As the night wore on, the guests caught fleeting glimpses of the man as he moved silently through the halls and corridors of the resort. They tried to stay together, but the man always seemed to be one step ahead of them. The mysterious figure remained an enigma, leaving the guests wondering who he was and what he wanted. But one thing was certain: he was a force to be reckoned with, and they would have to find a way to face him if they ever hoped to leave this place alive. The guests were filled with a growing sense of dread as they tried to unravel the mystery of the figure and survive the horrors of the resort. Their journey was just beginning, and they had no idea what lay ahead in the depths of the forest. Chapter 4: The Haunted Past. The group sat in the resort's main lobby, each lost in their own thoughts. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting flickering shadows across the walls. Outside, the wind howled, and rain pelted against the windows. It was the perfect setting for a ghost story, and the group knew they were living in one. It was then that Sarah spoke up. "I think I know what's going on here," she said, her voice quivering. "I did some research, and this place has a dark past." The group leaned in, their eyes fixed on Sarah. She continued, "Back in the 1920s, this place was owned by a wealthy family. They used it as a summer retreat, but things went sour when their daughter died under mysterious circumstances." The group gasped, and Sarah went on. "Legend has it that the daughter's ghost still haunts this place, seeking revenge on those who wronged her. And there have been other tragedies here too. Over the years, several people have died in accidents, and some have just vanished without a trace." The group sat in stunned silence, absorbing the weight of Sarah's words. They realized that they were not just dealing with a physical threat, but also with a haunting presence that lingered within the resort's walls. As the night wore on, strange things began to happen. Doors creaked open and shut, and the temperature dropped to bone-chilling levels. The group could hear whispers and moans coming from the shadows, and some even claimed to have seen the ghostly figure of the deceased daughter. They knew they had to act fast if they wanted to survive. They huddled together, determined to fight back against the evil that threatened to consume them all. But would it be enough? Only time would tell. As the night wore on, the group was forced to confront the dark forces that lurked within the resort's walls. They faced their fears head-on, determined to survive and uncover the truth behind the resort's haunted past. But with each passing moment, the presence grew stronger and the threat became more real. Chapter 4 was a turning point in the story as the group began to understand the true nature of the evil they were facing. It was a haunting tale of tragedy, revenge, and the unyielding power of the supernatural. As the story progressed, the tension mounted, and the group's resolve was put to the test. The reader was left on the edge of their seat, eager to know what would happen next. Chapter 5: The Fight for Survival. The night was darker than any they had ever experienced before. The wind howled like a banshee, and the trees outside the resort shook and creaked. The group had gathered in the resort's lobby, where they had barricaded themselves in with furniture and anything else they could find. They knew that the evil forces that lurked within the resort were closing in on them, and that they had to fight back if they wanted to survive. They had formed a plan, and each of them knew their role. As the first wave of attackers rushed towards them, they stood their ground and fought with everything they had. The air was filled with the sound of breaking furniture, shattering glass, and the screams of the wounded. Despite the odds against them, the group fought with all their might. They knew that their survival depended on it. As the fight wore on, they could feel their spirits being drained and their bodies tiring. But they refused to give up. They knew that they had come too far to give in now. With the dawn came a glimmer of hope. The attackers had retreated, and the group was still alive. They had won the first battle, but they knew that the war was far from over. They had to keep fighting, keep pushing, and keep struggling if they wanted to make it out alive. As they caught their breath and tended to their wounds, the group realized that they were stronger than they had ever thought possible. They had faced down the forces of evil, and they had come out on top. They knew that they still had a long way to go, but they were filled with a newfound sense of hope and determination. The fight for survival had been brutal and exhausting, but it had also been a test of their strength and courage. They had passed that test, and they were ready to face whatever lay ahead. With their spirits renewed, they knew that they would continue to fight until they had won their freedom from the clutches of the evil that had held them captive for so long. Chapter 6: The Final Confrontation. The remaining guests of the resort huddled together, preparing for the final confrontation with the darkness that had plagued them for so long. They knew that this would be their last chance to defeat the evil that lurked within the walls of the old building. The group was armed with everything they could find that could serve as a weapon. Their hands shook with fear as they made their way through the musty hallways and up the creaking stairs, their minds filled with doubts and regrets. As they reached the top floor, they were greeted with the sound of laughter. It was a maniacal, chilling laugh that echoed through the halls, causing their hair to stand on end. They knew that this was it, the final showdown. The evil force revealed itself, emerging from the shadows. It was a dark, twisted creature with long, gnarled fingers and piercing red eyes that glowed with an otherworldly light. It cackled at them, taunting them and daring them to try to defeat it. The group closed their eyes and took a deep breath, then charged forward with all their might. They swung their weapons, aimed their guns, and let out a primal scream as they attacked the creature with all their strength. The battle raged on, with both sides exchanging blows and screams. The group was determined to win, even if it meant sacrificing themselves to save others. Finally, the evil creature let out a deafening shriek and dissolved into thin air, leaving behind nothing but a musty scent that lingered in the air. The group knew that they had won, but at a great cost. They gathered together, mourning their losses, and promising never to forget the bravery and sacrifice of those who had fallen. They emerged from the resort, changed forever, but stronger and more resilient than ever before. As they made their way back to civilization, they knew that they would never forget the horrors they had faced and the lessons they had learned. They would always carry with them the memory of the final confrontation, the moment when they had come together to defeat the darkness and emerge victorious. Chapter 7, Epilogue. The epilogue of The Last Resort opens with a serene scene, the sun setting behind the mountains as birds chirp in the distance. We see the surviving guests sitting on the resort's front porch, sipping coffee, and quietly reflecting on their experience. Sarah, the only staff member who survived, sits among them, tears still visible on her face. She speaks up, "I never imagined I would see something like this in my lifetime. I thought I knew the forest inside out, but the evil that lived within the resort was beyond my wildest imagination." The group nods in agreement, each lost in their own thoughts. They had come to the resort as strangers, but their shared experience had bonded them in a way that only shared trauma can. As the night falls, they gather around a bonfire, watching as the embers dance in the air. One of the guests, a writer, speaks up, "I'm going to write about this, you know. Make it into a book." Another guest, a retired detective, chuckles, "Good luck with that. How do you plan on explaining all the weird things that happened?" The writer shrugs, "I'll figure it out." But you know what the craziest thing is? Despite everything we've been through, I don't regret coming here. It showed me how strong I can be, how much I can endure. The epilogue ends with the guests hugging each other, promising to keep in touch and never forget their time at the last resort. As they drive away, the resort is nothing but a distant memory, a reminder of the fragility of life and the resilience of the human spirit. Thanks for tuning in to Midnight Murmurs, where we bring you the creepiest and most thrilling stories around. If you enjoyed this tale of survival and terror at the last resort, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more spine-tingling content. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss an episode of Midnight Murmurs. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you in the next video.